Good afternoon. The Cinco de Mayo meeting of the Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust will be in order. And the first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the meeting of April 21st.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Voting, please. Minutes are approved. Are we expecting Cody? Yes. Okay. I maybe need to slow down here in case we... Next item is the consent docket. It has a number of separate matters on it.
Move the consent docket subject to individual consideration.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Are there questions or comments on the consent docket? Hearing none, voting please. Consent docket's approved. Next item is the concurrence docket, item 4.
Move consent docket. Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the concurrence docket. Are there questions or comments? Voting please. Current docket's approved. Next item, items for individual consideration. Item 5A is approve a service availability water service agreement between Oklahoma City and El Reno and the El Reno Municipal Authority.
I move the item, but how is this different from our existing agreement with El Reno?
Well, I'll let Craig and Brett describe it, but in a nutshell, we're phasing out one rate structure that El Reno used. We're phasing in the new rate structure adopted last summer, so that we're really making a change primarily about the rate choice, the rate structure they choose to be billed under. Craig, were there other items changed in the contract?
No, there were no other items changed, just a transition from take-or-pay to service availability.
Any other questions, comments?
I'll second it.
Have a motion and a second to approve the agreement. Voting please. Agreement's approved. Next item, presentation by staff on the urban development plan and a contract for architectural services, Mass Architects.
Mr. Chairman, our speakers today are Isaac Hines and Dwayne Mass from Mass Architects. The topic of the day is how we might develop lands at the Northwest Highway corner of the Hefner properties. Please take it away, Dwayne.
Thank you very much. My name is Dwayne Mass, and I greatly appreciate this opportunity today and all opportunities afforded us by the City of Oklahoma City and our community. We are looking at a marvelous piece of property. And did it advance? There we go. Thank you. And this piece of property, the history of this piece of property is that it has, and periodically, this body has received proposals from developers to begin to put this property into use. There were offers as recent as April 2014 to purchase this land, but one of the considerations is to sell the land, for lack of a better term, is a one-time shot in the arm. But if this leases, it is for lack of a better term, a funding arm that continues to work for the city. The non-ratepayer revenues may fund recreational improvements and other additional improvements as seen by this board. And so began in this May, we are now seeking this opportunity to begin to plan and develop an RFQ and RFP for developers for this property. We have a unique bevy of master plan experience. One of the more, we tried to show you very unique examples. Master planning is something we do, land development planning, but also looking at things in very huge. This is a statewide bioterrorism pandemic plan where we had to go through an entire state and identify things that worked towards a community, to help a state. That gives you many ideas in looking at how to look at a problem, and specifically a problem that involves large pieces of land and how best to utilize it. One of the next more interesting projects is, this is a large campus we did and what makes this unique is this sits upon Edmond, Oklahoma's first water treatment facility. So it's what do you do with an abandoned water treatment facility? Well, we turned it into a district service and maintenance campus that grew. It's got schools, test kitchens, all sorts of things, and it was best how to plan this land to make it work. Another project we're very proud of for the community is the Northeast Regional Health and Wellness Center. This project has been featured in the New York Times. It was said in the New York Times that Oklahoma City is the first city in the nation to have a facility like this, and that every city in the nation needs one of these. So again, this 54 acres is a plethora of public-private partnerships and is going to advance health and wellness through the use of this campus. Now, more to directly impacting what we have, this is a project we're doing right now, Chisholm Creek Retail Development. Altogether, it's 164 acres that we have under development right now. Everyone has seen Topgolf and Cabela's. They're coming along and coming along well, but this is truly a lifestyle center. This is a live, work, and play environment. And that's what we need in new urbanism, is a place where that not only do you want to come there and stay, enjoy yourself, but also the trick to good planning is a place where you not only want to just come and spend your money, spend your time, but also where you would love to live, work, and play. That is the key now. So these are some of the images from this, our latest commercial development and lifestyle center that we would be using some direct examples and direct experience towards. Our consultants design workshop, I'm going to let Mr. Isaac Hines.
Again, as Dwayne mentioned, thank you for having us here today. We have a great relationship with a group known as Design Workshop out of Denver. They have several examples. They've done similar experience and similar projects all across the country, not just locally. We've worked with them in the past. Great examples. They've worked with us on Chisholm Creek. One of the great advantages and benefits that they have is in all of these projects, the key examples that we've shown, you have to get buy-off and experience because there's several very interested parties, not just one owner, with his input. You have all the neighbors, all the surrounding community, all of the members, all of the boards, trusts. They bring a knowledge and a depth to this that's beyond the scope of Oklahoma City and can say, well, here's what's worked throughout the nation, here's what's worked here. In bringing whatever big ideas this board and this community and the vested parties in this want to bring forward. And as Dwayne said, we've worked with them on a few projects. They're fantastic to work with. I'll jump to the next slide. One of the things that we would like to do when we dive into this is it's a very fantastic and unique piece of property. It fronts Lake Hefner. It fronts Northwest Expressway. Some of the things that immediately jump out, as Dwayne mentioned, is this has potential to be live, work, play, explore the combination options. Don't limit ourselves immediately to just one. You have the very vibrant retail corridor along Northwest Expressway. How do you exploit that? That's the area of land that has the greatest potential immediately to generate revenue, which is the whole goal of this exercise, is you have the whole strip right there, and I think that piece of land is anywhere between 15 and 17 acres. Then you have the other remaining out of this roughly 95-acre piece of property. What do you do with? What do you make it great? How do you benefit the community? How do you benefit the neighbors? How does this impact Oklahoma City? How does this make Lake Hefner great and everything, and explore that to the state? And so along with Design Workshop is we would like to take opportunity to explore several varieties, options, things, how to do this, how to make that great. Working with the Water Utilities Trust, Friends of Hefner, everybody that's involved, hold community meetings, things of that nature, and get it going. And with that, exploring your ideas, I want to say again, thank you. I'm very excited to work with the Water Utility Trust, the City of Oklahoma City, and I'll open it up for questions.
Can we get a hard copy of your presentation?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Who would you like me to get that to? And I'll make sure you get a hold of it.
We'll make that happen. Thank you. If you'll drop a copy with Lisa or Michelle Listenby.
Okay.
Thanks.
How do you plan on engaging the recreational community and the neighbors to the south?
What we have planned currently in our contract and what we've worked out with the city is we're going to hold a series of what we're calling design charrettes. They will involve different partners throughout different times. We are going to bring key developers on board that are in the city to provide their input on what they've seen, what works in the city, what doesn't. We will send out flyers, graphics to the neighbors, invite them, because at the end of the day, if they feel like they've had input or they've had a say, because ultimately it is their neighborhood, then you get buy-off from them, see what their input is.
I realize that's going to be a very difficult task. We've been
I
on this
realize
for
that's a very
couple,
difficult
three
task.
times already.
Yeah, I've talked with Lisa and with Brett extensively about it. We anticipate that being a challenge, honestly, but that's half the fun, honestly, is trying to find something and get the community on board, because ultimately it makes for a great project if you can get buy-off.
Yeah. I certainly understand that the broad number of interested parties and stakeholders for Lake Hefner is a wonderful thing. The south end of the lake is a little bit tired, so the more we can, and a little bit, some of it's vacant, the more we can pull together those recreational uses with potentially some commercial property on the highway, we'll get a plan that we can start implementing that makes things better for everyone. I don't want anyone to be looking at ugliness on the lake. Obviously, while we're making good water quality, we want it to be pleasant and a place to relax.
Correct, and that's the reason. Like right now, I don't want we're not trying to lock it into one idea, but like I said, you have the vibrant corridor along Northwest Expressway. It lends itself great to, as that retails it. You're going to generate a lot of non-ratepayer revenue there. You have a lot of things to that north parcel, like you said, where the neighbors back up to it. There's a model air park right there. You have the kayak point where I think it's the Girl Scouts use cast-off canoes and things. There's a lot of recreational activity. You have Stars and Stripes Park to the north. The idea wouldn't be to hinder any of that. It would be to try and enhance upon that.
The argument to bring in non-ratepayer dollars was used just a few months ago on an oil well project,
Right.
and that didn't go real well. So don't plan on riding
I
that
don't
horse.
plan on putting any
Don't plan on riding that
bearings.
horse too far.
I hadn't planned on it.
Let me ask you, tell me what happens immediately if we approve this item today?
The first steps in this would be to, one, get a survey of the property to know what we're working with, what utilities are there, because there's a lift station, there's a lot of electrical lines, there's things of that nature. Step one would be to gather that. Then the first steps, task one, would be to engage a design workshop and start to do a demographic study, a market study of what this can support. Can it support more retail? Are we already at, maximum absorption? Do we need housing in the area? What's the median income? Study the demographics, the population, and then create a report for you guys to say, based on what we've seen, the area can support A, B, and C. It has a population of this, a projected growth of this, 5-year, 10-year, show what we think it can handle. And then once that's approved, move on from there and start to create alternates and design studies that report would then guide how we push that into design guidelines and how to develop the property.
And what's the timeline for that work?
Task one has a timeline of 60 days.
Okay. And we're going to have the public meetings and input in the first 60 days, or does that come later in this process?
I believe in task one we have a few they're not public meetings in task one. We're going to invite some developers and some people that have been doing things around the city to give us their input, but we will be having meetings with Aqua and interested parties, not necessarily the public.
My advice would be, before we get too far down the process, we start looking for ways to involve
Correct.
input from the public, because the sooner we get them involved,
The goal is not to blindside them.
Even if you're not ready, I think you got to tell them there's a process going on and they will be involved. Because if they think there's a process going on and they won't be involved, that's that's even if they're not involved yet, letting them know that they will be involved before it's too late I think is important. I think,
Agreed.
Right.
Yes, and I think the more upfront and transparent we are, the better it's going to be.
In this particular budget item we're talking about, we've got a couple phases, so that's the first phase.
Yes,
What's
sir.
the overall timeline? Is this a 12, 18-month process, at which point we maybe have some sort of plan we're ready to move forward with?
The overall time frame is, ideally, I would like to get this done in a year or under, and
Okay.
that might seem ambitious, and it's going to depend on people's schedules when we can get people rounded up and together. But at the end of that, yes, a developer will have been selected through an RFQ, RFP process, and if necessary, we would do a best and final offer. We'll have design guidelines in place. We will have everything that he needs to say, here's your recipe to go create this magical thing that we've discussed.
Okay.
I can take you back about 30 years on this piece of property. I was the chairman of the Water Trust in the middle 80s.
And you can see all the progress we've made.
And we had the great idea that this would be a good idea to develop. And for a long time, I claimed that idea, that was my idea, until they started the meetings and the hearings we did the develop it on the East Wharf thing and the rise of the Friends of Lake Hefner. And now I claim no knowledge of it except for the fact that I'm admitting it right now that I knew it then. I don't know whether hopefully you realize how intense the development is out there. I mean, how the people's attitudes and.
I've discussed at length with Lisa and Brett the attitudes in regards to the East Wharf and to their more recently referenced proposal to drill for oil. And like I said, I accept that that's a challenge, but if something great comes out of tackling that challenge in the end, I'm excited to do it.
Don't take that I don't think this is a good idea, because I do think it's a good idea. I think it's one of those pieces of property that ratepayers own and doesn't get any return on, but I thought the same thing about the oil well. And it's just, it's very difficult. Of course, it might be this $363,000 is going to be paid to your company, right?
Yes.
Well, it might be easier for you to endure the pain than it was for me. But
it might make it a little easier.
But I think it's a good idea. I mean, I think it's a good idea. There are lands all around like this. In fact, one of the things I asked for when I was leaving the council the first time in 1989 was a book of all the city-owned property. And it took I was off the council about 3 years before that book was delivered to me, and it was about this thick. So and most of them were gores and things like that we couldn't develop, that didn't really have any value to. But it's a worthwhile idea. I'm all for it. But
It's clearly an asset that we can make better use of. There obviously will be constraints, right, from the public side as to what you do and where you go, but it's worth pursuing. And I think the way East Wharf is played out certainly shows it can be done well. And quite frankly, I had not thought of that particular piece of property being suitable for that kind of development, and just looking at what you're talking about opens up all sorts of concepts that I think could be really interesting, and we ought to pursue it. So I would move approval of the item if we have not yet had a motion.
Second. Have a motion and a second. All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
We do not need executive session.
Move to strike.
A motion and a second to strike. Voting, please. Item stricken. Next is items from trustees. Any comments? Hearing none, the general manager's report. Presentation by staff on proposed water conservation program initiatives.
Mr. Chairman, with us this afternoon is Mallory Gotcher, our new Water Conservation Program Manager. Mallory actually has been working on our conservation program since its inception. She was with Oklahoma State University helping us with the OSU part of the program implementation before joining us as an employee several months ago. Mallory, welcome. Take it away, please.
Thanks. Thank you for this opportunity to let me come and provide some information about the Water Conservation Program and some of our goals of what we hope to accomplish this year. We really want to engage the community through some positive interactions to increase customer awareness this year. So we want to achieve that through three basic goals: continuing and increasing our education and outreach efforts, also talking about city-led initiatives and partnerships, and continuing some reasonable regulation and enforcement. The top photo is actually from our water conservation garden that we just opened last May, and so we had a pretty good turnout, and we just had a workshop out there this weekend. And the bottom two photos, unfortunately, are from Oklahoma City just this spring, when we had all the rains and people forget to turn off their irrigation systems, and I'm sure you guys have maybe seen something similar, and some broken sprinkler heads there. So we're trying, we still have a ways to go with our education program. So I'd like to just start with maybe a Squeeze Every Drop Landscape Award. This is a voluntary program that I think public support is kind of crucial for water conservation acceptance and success. So this award would provide some positive motivation for residents to move from awareness to action. And we have the opportunity to kind of highlight these success stories on our social media. We have a Facebook and a Twitter account using these stories for our e-newsletter, and we also have YouTube videos, so we can just kind of help promote those programs. The bottom photo is actually from Norman's program. They have a Water's Worth It campaign, and so they've really tried to demonstrate what a xeriscape landscape looks like in Oklahoma, and including some native plantings, and just kind of increasing awareness and getting people on board through some positive interactions. An irrigation system audit program, we'd like to pilot a program this year, next year, and kind of be able to get out and talk to people about their irrigation systems, help them to figure out how to program their controller, how to use some irrigation technology. They've become a part of water conservation programs across the United States, and so it's just provides some practical information for homeowners without compromising landscape quality, which is sometimes a barrier for homeowners. And just kind of an example of that, the top photo was taken by one of our field employees, and there's two types of irrigation heads going on right there. We have a spray head that puts out about 1.5 inches water per hour, and then you have the rotor head, which is putting out about 1/4 inch per hour. So you have one, you're going to have water about 6 times the amount of need, and then you're going to have a dry spot in the area that rotor's not reaching. So just some simple common sense things that we can get out and show people just to update their systems. And then the lower two photos, actually the one with the trash can I got from an irrigation contractor here in Oklahoma City. And so just need to cap that off, and so making a few adjustments in the landscape is pretty easy to do. And they've done similar programs in Texas, and I've seen water savings between 12 and 30%. And so I think it could be successful here in Oklahoma City. Partnering more with the Master Gardeners to kind of help extend their outreach and their educational influence for programs that they're already doing. They have a xeriscape program coming up in July. They had a water conservation workshop last month, and so just helping and supporting them in their outreach efforts, and maybe training them to do some of our irrigation audits and helping to get them on board as well. And they've been very receptive and very helpful whenever we talk with them, and so not just using the Oklahoma County Extension Master Gardeners, but maybe kind of furthering our reach and getting some of the other counties involved as well. We'd also like to do a poster contest and engage local students. I think this also affects parents as well. When you get kids excited about water conservation, and it's funny when we have outreach programs how much more the kids know than their parents about how much their toilet is actually using, and so it's kind of funny to watch them defeat their parents on quizzes for water conservation efforts. So we'd like to partner with some local schools and maybe some public venues like libraries to help display any of their poster contests, maybe involve the mayor and city council to just kind of continue this conservation ethic and get our students involved, and maybe doing some word competitions and just including just some really just good fun times while actually learning in the process. Just to help round this out, to do a Water Smart Restaurants program, San Antonio and a lot of places in Texas, Arkansas, California do these types of programs where they involve their restaurants to reduce water use, usually by voluntary measures, just making sure they have low-flow toilets, the correct valves for washing dishes, and using air-cooled ice machines instead of water-cooled. And so it would be voluntary changes, and we could certify those restaurants and provide recognition on our website just to help give them kind of a boost and some free advertisement as well. The next project would be a utilities facilities audit. And so basically, we would want to make some changes that we're asking our customers to make. And so going through our facilities, checking what kind of toilets we have, making sure that we don't have any leaks in our own facilities, and then coming up with some procedures and maybe including other city departments as well, so that they have resources to go through their facilities and increase water conservation in their own buildings. The next would be partnering with the planning department. They have a housing rehab program that they maintain, and their need far outweighs the available funding that they currently have. And so we could partner with them to help support their programs. They estimate about $5,200 per home for water-related appliances, for low-flow toilets, and leaks in their houses. So it would be a great project to help partner with them. And the next program would be for basically an overall grant type project where people could apply, organizations, homeowner associations, and help them to figure out how they can reduce water waste on their medians. Lower photo you may recognize. So just changing out those irrigation nozzles to use stream nozzles that have larger droplet size and is less susceptible to wind, and reducing runoff and waste from irrigation, and using more like soil moisture sensors, rain-free sensors to help reduce just overall waste in the landscape. And we'd like to continue our enforcement program. Our field employees do a really good job at talking to the customers about how they can actually reduce water waste in the landscape. They just don't hand them a ticket and leave. So they actually talk to them and help figure out what the problem is. And so in the future, we may consider additional ordinances to further regulate practices like watering in the rain or excessive runoff due to irrigation systems. So even though I brought my umbrella to the Cinco de Mayo meeting today, I think that we need to kind of spread a consistent message of water conservation through Oklahoma City and through the Squeeze Every Drop landscape. And we have a really great opportunity to reach out to our customers and help promote these programs. So that's my last slide.
Do our building codes require water-efficient installations?
Yes, plumbing codes have been changed to reflect 1.6 gallon flush toilets, for example, 1.4.
In 86 and also in the late 90s, there were plumbing code changes at the federal level that mandated the amount of water that could be output from various devices, and so the codes provide that. There are new recommendations. Water Smart's got a new program that go even farther. Those are not in the code anywhere yet, but they're starting to move into the code in some of the more arid states.
Okay.
One of the things that occurred to me in the presentation is the $5,200 per home number for, I guess that'd be going into average home and retrofitting all the things. I wonder what the cost would be of just going into homes and doing an inventory and telling the homeowner what needed to be done.
Cost.
At $5,200 a home, I can't imagine us being able to ever implement that kind of a program except for very, very, very low-income people.
Right.
But is there a possibility to develop a program that would do that for anybody and just give them, at the end of the inventory, they just get a list of this is what you really need to do, you're using water improperly this way or wasting it, whatever, and let them
I know a lot of cities in Texas actually provide free audits for homes, and that's kind of what the irrigation audit program is kind of geared towards. We could also look into including audits inside the house too. That program, they're funded through federal, state, and in-kind funds, and so it would basically just kind of be helping to support them in another way. So.
Well, the $5,200 figure was fixing it, finding it and fixing it,
Yes,
right?
it's actually going in and replacing toilets and fixing. So that was kind of their average number that they gave us. It's not across the board.
Sure.
And most of the money was spent on plumbing retrofits, not on conservation devices.
Right.
How do
This
we,
is home rehab.
how are we going to measure our performance over time? Do we calculate a per capita consumption number? Is that how we're going to measure? Because if in theory our community's growing, then total water flows will increase over time, right? How do we think we're going to measure this performance?
We have very smart people who have worked out an equation using cooling degree days to figure how water use is changing over time. The per capita demand number kind of it differs because of our population, and we serve so many surrounding communities, and so we've developed that equation, and we are tracking it.
Well, it's a metric that I think we need to think about moving it into the nomenclature, not nomenclature, but making it a part of a term that people can follow and track and measure, so we can get people thinking in terms of water consumption and how we're doing and measuring it over time. One, we need to know how we're doing, and it needs to be something that's fairly easily understood so that trustee members can figure it out, right? Because we're probably not as smart as the guys that are calculating. But also to have a number that we can use to show people we're making progress and where we go, because over time we have to make some systemic changes. Building code's one of them. Rate structure is something we're going to have to adapt over time. We're starting that process, and we'll get there, but I think we need to think about how we're going to measure and show.
Sure.
So,
Yes, we have been reluctant to talk about the productivity because there are so many variables. And so
Right.
we've had folks working on how to isolate those variables and run calculations normalizing
Right.
against those variables. And I think that's a really good thing. What we can tell you, though, is that indoor use this year was 500 gallons per capita, 500 gallons a month in a house, less than it was last year.
Right.
And that there is a downward trend. That's a very good thing. Some of that's because of new housing.
Right.
Some of it's because people are growing more aware of simply turning off their sprinklers.
Right.
The program has focused on outdoor use until now because we think there's a 30% total use in households for irrigation.
Right.
That we can tackle a little bit and make some real progress.
well, and that will help people to understand what's going on, because I think, most folks kind of want to do the right thing. They just don't necessarily, they all think they're average. Oh, I'm about an average user, and if we can find a way to start providing a metric that shows them relative to their neighbors, maybe you're not, because in fact you do run your watering system more. Just anything we can do over time to build awareness and understanding, and also as we make progress then to kind of create a positive feedback loop. You guys are doing great. Over the last 10 years we've made this much gain, we need to keep going, all of those kinds of things. But it's going to take time, and so as soon as we can start to standardize around how we communicate that kind of information, the better it will be.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Did we, when did we put the current rules in for usage in? When was that effective?
April of 2013.
So it's be 2 years now, two years. I'd like to see if we can just get a comparison with that 2 years, to see how effective that's been. We've also increased rates during that period of time, which we expected there'd be some price elasticity, and that was supposed to do some little bit too.
It would be good to see.
But I'd like to
Be
see
happy to
2
bring you a
years,
report about that.
see what we've done in 2 years. Again, I would, once in a while I see something in the media that talks about things like the continued water rationing in Oklahoma City will still in effect, and I think somehow or other, we haven't got it out to them that that's not rationing, that's the way it's going to be, that's it, and I'd just like to see that changed in the public eye, because I can't foresee a circumstance that would cause it to go the other direction again. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you know whether it's raining in Canton or not?
Say that again?
Do you know whether it's raining in Canton today or not?
I think it's raining out in western Oklahoma. I don't know if it's north
Okay.
and west.
I do.
That's the main reason I come every Tuesday, to find out whether it's...
It has
Rain
rained,
in
and
Canton.
it has rained over an inch in the Panhandle, but the rain has not yet reached Lake Canton. There is a great forecast of multiple inches of rain in the
Yes.
western part of the state.
Okay. Any other matters to come before the trust? We're adjourned. Thank you.